the dwelling. Let's get it wrong. This is where the pros come to play. Selling in the dwelling every day. Top experts, real talk straight from the train. In the dwelling, get paid.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Selling in the Dwelling, the go-to podcast for the in-home and remodeling world. I'm your host, Alan Langer, and we've got another great episode coming up because I've got another great guest coming up for you. But before we get to Megan, two quick things. The website is sellinginthedwelling.com, and on the website, you want to go to the Ask Alan segment, send me a question. If I read your question in the next podcast, you get a free Selling in the Dwelling t-shirt. So take care of that. And the other big news is that our title sponsor is Paradigm Vendo. Go to paradigmvendo.com/dwelling. They are our title sponsor. Good friends. Check them out. They're the best software you can find in the in-home selling industry. So without further ado, I want to bring on Megan Beattie. Megan, I've known her for years, but virtually and in the social media world because I see her everywhere. But I think people who are listening to this podcast probably know Megan as well. She's known as the lead queen, and you can see behind her, she has Megan Knows Marketing, and she certainly does. Megan has been in the business for probably decades. I haven't actually asked you how long, but she really helps companies, in-home service companies, get leads, keep leads, set leads, home shows, call centers, all of that stuff. So Megan, welcome to the podcast. I'm really glad you're here. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks, Alan. Thanks for having me.
So Megan works for Tony Hoty and Associates, which Tony is a lead company, and he's been around for years as well. Awesome guy. In the in-home world, what I'm seeing now is one of the biggest things when I talk to business owners and even sales managers. What's your biggest issue right now? They always say leads. It's been like that for probably a year or maybe more. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is the number one thing people are coming up with, saying leads are my biggest problem?
Well, Alan, as you know, and anyone that has been in the industry for more than, 10 years knows, we had a giant boom during COVID-19, right? And we
Yeah.
spent about 4 years riding the coattails of that.
Yep.
And so leads were easy to get, selling was easy, right? Like we started our fence company during COVID in 2020. And man, I was giving email bids in yards and I sold $1 million the first year, right? Like easily, like not what I'm used to, which is, in-home selling like we do, right? Like with a
Yeah.
real process, but it was easy. And so what happened was we all got spoiled with leads and we all got spoiled with sales being easy for about 4 years. The end of 2024, beginning of 2025, which all things that come up must go down, right? So we knew that was coming eventually. And it is now normalized back to where it was like 2018, 2019. And those of us that have been around a while know that, right? But those
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
got into the business 2020 or sooner, we got a little spoiled. A lot of people got spoiled. And so what happened was we thought it will always be this way. Now digital is expensive as hell. It's gone through the roof in terms of costs on paid search, SEO leads. I mean, got clients happy with an $1,100 issued lead cost, which I never thought would happen. Right. Oh, we're only at 1,000 this month. And several years back, we would have said, oh, we're kind of mad. We're at 500 or 600. So that's done it's created companies that have had to find other ways to get leads and to hedge some of those more expensive lead costs, right? And that's really what I've been doing since I got into the business very early on. Like I got into the business making leads out of nothing. So inbound leads weren't even a thing my company had when I got there. Like we had no inbound leads. That's why they brought me there. They said, we need leads. So get them in a van and go knock on some doors.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so I'm used to having no leads. And then a lot of these companies that are out there currently, they just don't know how to generate their own. They just have relied on Lead Aggregator or Google for so long. And now those costs are so high that if they don't have something else to balance it out, they can be in real trouble.
Yeah, and they're so high, and if they come in and they're spending $1,000 and it's really a bad lead, or it's just a lead that the rep shouldn't even be there, that's one of the things that drives an owner crazy, because how do they get a more qualified lead? But I think you and I are cut from the same, whatever the term is, same skin, where when I was selling, I got 5 or 6 leads a week and the rest were me. Like I was
Right.
out there
You get your
getting
own.
my own referrals, get my own self gens. And then
Yeah.
you're right. Then comes 2020 and you get all these guys like, hey, where are the leads? What's going on here?
Right.
This company sucks and all that
Right.
stuff. So what would you do if I'm starting a company tomorrow? I'm starting Alan and Megan's roofing company tomorrow, and I hire you to say, like, get me leads. What was the first thing you would do?
Well, first thing I do is make sure foundational things are put in place. We've claimed our Google business listing. We have all the basic web
Yep.
stuff set up. We have a website that functions as high converting because all the other lead sources that we drive into the business are ultimately going to end up on our website. So we have to make sure that's done first. But then after that, we need to start finding out some ways to make leads. Shows and events would be one of the first things that I would do. The other thing that I would do is investigate some of the lead aggregators because in the beginning we need to keep the lights on. I'm running a small business. My husband and I own a residential fence company. So this is very close to the time for me because we haven't been in business that long. We have to find ways at a low cost to make leads. Unless you have, unlimited private equity money, fine, but that's not most contractors' story, right? And so
Exactly.
we have to figure out how we can bring in enough leads at a cost that we can keep the lights on, keep payroll going, and then eventually be able to grow the company. But we have to have some foundational things in place. No matter what we do, we've got to have somebody fielding the leads in the call center. We have to have someone that is the first point of contact,
So
getting to the leads right away. And even if you run shows and events and canvassing, those leads have to have a call center touch point too. So in either fashion, we need to get that going. So one person to field the leads. That's what I had going here at my call center. I had one person. Now she's the office manager. Now I have a kid running my call center. Now I have a second caller. So we've grown it from nothing into, a couple of people. As the sales rep team grows, we need support for them in the field with no shows or one party appointments. We need to be able to give them backup appointments. We need to be able to make sure we're resulting leads so we can rehash. Like there's a lot of things that initial call center person needs to do. So I would tackle shows and events right away. I would make sure we have foundational Google things put in place. Make sure we have a call center person to field those leads. Whatever you're paying them, it's worth its weight in gold because without them, everything
yep.
else is going to cost more.
You hit the nail right on the head. I would ask business owners when I'm called for consulting, whatever. I'm like, who's the most important person in your company?
Mhm.
And they'll answer me, or they'll answer, oh, my sales manager, or whatever. No one ever says the person who picks up the phone. Like to
No.
me, that's really the most important
Yes.
person. That's the first contact that starts the customer journey. And they're like, some of them are like, hey, Marge, answer the phones this afternoon, or Shirley, or Big Bob from the warehouse. We don't have anyone
Mhm.
for 2 hours. Can you pick up the phone? You can't run a business like that. It doesn't work. You
No.
need someone dedicated to who knows what they're doing, who picks up that phone, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, if you think about it, Alan, with human beings in general, right? We're going to put anything on the back burner that we like to do the least. So if you got Bertha who's keeping the books and you tell her personality type, now we want you to be cheery and answer the phone. Um, we're just not going to get everything we need out of that scenario, right? If we got Big Bob in the warehouse, unloading the window truck, and oh, by the way, there's, Mr. Johnson is calling and he's trying to force a price over the phone. Like Big Bob doesn't want to answer that call. He doesn't want to
Right.
answer. So, and to be fair, like we should have people in their area of strength, right? We don't really want Big Bob answering the phone anyway. Like he might give too
No.
much information. We need somebody quick to, point to the sales appointment as the solution to their problem and, be able to get our sales rep in the house. The amount of warm reception the customer gives to our sales rep when they get there is directly proportionate to the person on the phone setting up the appointment and how they set it up.
Mm,
So it's a very important piece that we don't realize until we don't have it.
yeah, absolutely. And there's so many things that are asked, especially when it comes to call center. Here's one I'm going to bring up. I'd be shocked if you don't train this, but
Okay.
the one party appointment,
Of
that's the biggest frustration with
course.
owners and sales reps. Oh, we have too many one parties.
Hmm.
How do you handle what is your whether it's a script or how do you
Yeah.
handle that? I have a small way that I train. You do this a lot more than I do. How do you handle the one party or the person that says, "Oh, I'll take the information. I'll tell my husband when he gets home."
Absolutely. So, yeah, one of the biggest headaches in our industry is that now there's two sides to the coin. There's these companies that demand it and they tell the customer it's a requirement that we need you all at the kitchen table and we need all decision makers present, all homeowners, all spouses. What happens is I agree as well, Alan, because I mean, I've sold in the home. So I agree. I want both parties there.
Yeah,
I just don't agree that telling them that we require it is the best way to get them to comply.
100%.
And that
I think it does the opposite effect.
it did 100% as the opposite effect. In fact, when you, as a call center person, use the word decision maker, you have now just given them the words to use against you.
Yep.
Because now the first thing that comes out of their mouth is, well, I'm the only decision maker, which we know damn well is not true.
Right.
However, I can't just say, well, Mr. Jones, you're not picking out a bathroom without your wife. Like that's not going to track on the
Right.
phone. So I need to handle that in a different way, which is number one, we don't come out the gate going, we need, just so you know, we just say need 60 to 90. We need all decision making. I agree with all the concept that we do need those things. I just believe that human beings work under what's in it for me. And if I tell the customer, this is what we want, this is what we prefer, they don't care what we prefer, they care what they prefer. And
Agreement.
so we have to really, first of all, when the husband and wife get together, the wife and wife, husband is 2026, could be any combination of this, relationship type. When they get together, they have a meeting before we get there. And, when they decide they're going to one leg us, whether it's predisposition that they're going to do that or they just last
Right.
minute mandated to stay over at work. Do we know what we want? Oh yeah, we know. I just want, white bathrooms, just got to be updated, just nothing fancy, and they think that's it.
Right.
With windows, it's the same thing. They just need to open,
Right.
they need to be white, right? Roof, it's just shingles, right? They know nothing of ventilation or insulation or any underlayment, nothing, right? And so to them, it's very simple. So we need to speak to that on the phone. Hey, when it comes to replacing windows today in 2026, there are just so many options, colors, styles, not to mention the way you want them installed in glass packages. What we have found in 20 years of doing business, we know initially it sounds like a window is pretty basic, but I got to tell you, most people don't sit around and think about these projects every day. Something people do a couple times in a lifetime. So whenever we meet with people, there's always more questions from both parties than they ever anticipate initially. So in order to leave you the most accurate quote while we're there, 9 times out of 10, we end up needing both parties' input. I'm sure you could appreciate that. But the first thing we have to really get down to brass tacks on is number one, how did you ask for both people? Because most
Right.
companies miss this off the rip. They're just like, is there any other people on the deed? And they're like, no. Well, we got somebody. They say do it all the time. I go, well, what the hell do you care if they're on the deed or not? If their spouses in the house together and they live together, they got to be there. Well, no, if they're not on the deed, they don't. I said, you never sold in the house then.
Yeah, exactly.
I have. And so, I said, clearly, this is a person that's not educated on why this makes sense, right? And to be fair, Alan, what I found is we don't educate the call center on why it's not in the customer's best interest to set a one party.
Right.
That's really where it begins
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
our call center hears enough times I'm the only decision maker, and guess what? They start to believe it. It's like sales reps in the home. They start to hear you guys were too expensive, and you know what they do, Alan? They start to believe that.
Yeah. And now they have no confidence in their price.
Correct. Over and over again, the customer trains them. And so
Mhm.
our call center gets trained too because they don't understand the bigger picture of the fact that we go out and meet with one of them. The problem is if you do pitch it, because studies have shown that trying to get back in the house, right, and reset the appointment. I mean, there's it's a mixed bag. Like
Mhm.
in one scenario, we're not going to get back in. The other scenario, we can. Then we have to hope they're both there this time and present to both. But if you present to one party, right, the other party is never going to get an accurate view of the value. They're just not going to. And so what ends up happening is they come home, they hear one thing, as you know, the price, and they say, oh, we need to get a few more prices. And they end up going with Dale out of jail or Chuck in a truck, and they don't take care of them. And then they
Let
call
us
us
know.
back in, 5 years to do it the right way. Now they paid twice plus inflation. So we didn't help the customer by
Not at
doing.
all. Yeah.
And that's what our call center doesn't get educated on from the higher ups very often. They don't let them know that even if it sounds plausible that they're the only decision, maybe that's at the price they think it's going to cost before we get there. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
so, when we get there, it's going to change. And really, it's something that both people are going to have questions on and be a part of, no matter what way you slice it or dice it. And so it starts in the mind, and that is that we just don't give our people the right education on why it is. And we also just say, hey, we need all parties there, make sure they're both there. And then what happens is we draw this hard line and we lose a bunch of those expensive leads coming in on the front end
Mhm.
because we've said something that just pissed the customer off. And maybe we got a bad review on the way out the door.
Absolutely. Yeah. It doesn't stop there anymore. Yeah.
No,
You don't even
exactly.
go to the house and you get a bad review. So that's
Yeah.
the worst case scenario.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's a couple other ways we handle it. If, they've been abused by someone else in our industry, it's very common where they'll say, well, is this one of those things? And you're like, oh, what makes you say that? And
Yeah.
then they,
Tell me about why you
no,
just said that.
yeah, tell me what makes you come to that conclusion. Well, we had such and such, and it's like, oh, okay. So someone was poorly trained in the home and didn't understand how to present properly is what really happened. And so now they're going to drag that baggage from that old relationship with that other window company into this
Yeah.
one with us. And our call center needs to know how to put that to bed or they will never get both people there.
So that's what I'm talking. That's why I asked you this question because there's so many layers in a call center. It's
There
not
is.
just answering the phone. It's all of this that you just
Oh
covered.
yeah.
All of these scenarios. Amazing. I'm going to ask you now is
Hmm.
if you're training me, this is what I used to do. Tell me what you think about this. So
Okay.
I did a lot. I led the RBA network when I sold for RBA for 7
Hmm.
straight years for self-gen and referral appointments. And when I
Hmm.
would try to set an appointment, I never said, are you the only decision maker? I actually
Yeah.
used to use this phrase. I would talk about what you, hey, there's a lot of things, windows have changed, there's a lot of blah, blah, blah. Then I
Mhm.
would say, so who else would benefit from being there and hearing
Mhm.
all this? So I just say, who else would benefit, putting it on them rather than saying we
Mhm.
require. And it
Mhm.
was pretty successful. What do you think about that sentence?
Yeah, yeah, no, I don't think that's bad at all. I think that most of the time you'll get it with that phraseology. We ask, is there a spouse in the house there with you? And we say that because it rhymes and it's kind of cutesy, so it's less, invasive than are you married, right? If they say no, we say, is there anybody else whose opinion you value on projects around the home? And so that's our
I like
second
that.
check, because truthfully, that's it. I mean, they are going to value someone else's opinion on something, then they should be there. And that also covers like our senior citizens that might need their kids. That also is going to cover like a young person who bought the house, but dad helped them with the mortgage, right? She's going to say, yeah, I run everything by my dad. Well, then I'm going to catch it with that phrase. That does give me a little bit of a, leg up on the scenario of just expecting that they're going to tell me whose opinion they would value. I start with, is there a spouse? Because if there's a spouse there, we want them there. But I don't immediately say, oh, and by the way, we require that. I'm just going to say, yeah, is there a spouse? How long have you owned the home there? Great. Now, is there a spouse in the house there with you? Great. And their name
Yeah,
is,
I like that.
and if they say something like, well, what does that matter? I don't see how that's relevant. Well, the first thing that we do is we back that down. We respond with softness when we get a bully, like when someone is getting very
Yeah.
defensive and we haven't really said anything yet to be defensive about. We haven't demanded they're both there or anything yet. So we start to say, well, is there a spouse in the house? Well, what does that matter? Oh, we come out. We just didn't want to call anyone, hey, you. I mean, how would you like us to refer to the other person there? And
Right,
then they
right.
go, oh,
Yeah.
Joanne.
I'm a jerk.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I barked up a tree I didn't need to. So that will back down a lot of it. But then, if we need to take it head on later, we can. But what that enables us, Alan, to do is the rest of the conversation, now that I know there's another person, I'm going to say you both, you folks, you guys. I'm going to say
Right.
you and Joanne, the whole conversation. So when I get down to the end and ask for both, it's not a surprise. See, most companies try to slip it in at the end when it's too late. You've already had the whole conversation with A and B party, and then you try to bring C into it. And they're like, no, you just
Yeah,
yanked the rug out from under me. Instead, we gotta plant the seed. Rick Grasso taught me that, many, many years ago. People have to hear something like 10 times to really get it. I have to be able to plant those seeds through the conversation. The other thing that helps me with, much like a sales presentation, is if I handle the objection before it comes up. You can't tell me she doesn't have an opinion when you just told me what you and Joanne hate about the windows. You just told me what you and Joanne have tried to do to solve your problem already. You just told me what you and Joanne are thinking about. When I come down to the end and ask for you and Joanne, you can't try to tell me she doesn't have an opinion. You just told me for the last 5 minutes that
right.
it just gives me several different, because I've done this every which way. I've sampled and tried every piece of verbiage out there,
Uh,
and this is the one that gets overall least amount of resistance, best amount of results, and covers people that live together that aren't married, boyfriend and girlfriend that live together, fiance and fiance. Like it covers all those different relationship types that we have to be conscious of today.
I love this, and then this is again, like, this is why I had you on because you're bringing up such great tangible stuff to use, and you
Mhm.
also are bringing up the nuances of the sales conversation. Because let's admit it, that call is a sales call, and you said something that I guarantee you, if I told sales reps, "Give me a list of the top 10 things you gotta be cognizant of in a sales appointment," this would not come out, and it's
Mhm.
tone.
Mhm.
Tone is so unbelievably important in a sales conversation, and reps don't think about that. And especially on a phone call, that's all you have is your
That's all
tone.
you got.
You don't
Yeah.
have your face, you don't have any body language. Do you train about, you said soft tone. What do you
Mhm.
tell your call center people about tone?
Well, we talk a lot about how you must come across with most of the questions we're going to ask as curious and not interrogating. And that has a lot to do with the tone, right? If our voice inflection goes up at the end, we're going to have a curious tone. If they say to me something like, yeah, my wife doesn't need to be here, I make all the decisions, I'd say, I get it. What makes you say that? Very
Right.
curious, right? Softer and tone goes up at the end. Well, what makes you say that? And in that case, the customer reads that as curious. On the other hand, if I say, "What makes you say that?" They're gonna go, "Well, who the hell are you to ask me that?" Right? And we're gonna get into an altercation. The last thing we want on the phone is an argument. We get a lot more, questions lead to confessions. And so we get a lot more accomplished when we ask questions. If we're able to ask a question and we can land the question in a curious tone and the customer hears that from our tone, it doesn't leave the customer sort of deciphering our question and trying to read more into it than maybe they should, right? And so the tone is very important in that area. It's also very important to pause for emphasis when
Yep.
we need to, right? If we want to get a point
So
across
important.
on the phone, yeah, we absolutely have to. Most people on the phone talk way too fast, not loud enough in some cases, depending on, who our person on the other end of the phone is. If I'm talking to a senior, okay, and my mom lives with me, she's 76, so I can tell you this, we have to talk slower and louder, or we're just going to say it twice anyway.
Right.
"What was that, honey?" Right? But the seniors get frustrated quicker, and they're more apt to hang up when they get frustrated than to stay on the phone with what they perceive as a fast-talking salesperson.
Right.
So, we have to be conscious of that and make sure that, our tone is not, sounding demanding or overly salesy and much more curious. Because again, questions lead to confessions. They'll
Yeah.
confess
Yeah.
many things if we just ask the right questions. I can ask the right line of questions that lead them to the answer I want them to give anyway. I know
Right.
what that looks like. So,
Right. I talk about this all the time. Nobody wants to meet with a salesperson, and
mhm,
nobody wants to have that phone like, "Oh, I gotta make the phone call to set up the appointment." They're expecting a bad experience.
absolutely,
And
because
and
most of
when
what
they
they
get a
get.
good experience or get experience that they're not expecting, it's
Mhm,
like a breath of fresh air, and then it's probably easier, and you gotta show that within that first 60 seconds of the phone call that this is not gonna be the experience
100%.
you're expecting.
Absolutely. And one of the ways we do that is we change the greeting. Every company that you call is going to say, "Hi, thank you for calling such and such. How can I help you?" And look, there's nothing wrong with that, Alan. But that's what they expect, right?
Right,
So there's no
exactly.
differentiation. So if we say, "Thank you for calling Privacy Fence Company. How can I make you smile today?"
There you
It's
go.
something different, right? Or, and we do play on words at different companies. How can we create a raving fan today? How can we make you a raving fan today? There's all kinds of things, but I learned that from Joel Tallman back in the business many years ago at Alarmco Windows. He was doing the red carpet treatment. When they would answer the phone that way, right? They were getting raving reviews. And so when we started doing it, I realized why, because the customer immediately goes, "Oh, you just did. Oh," I'd say, "Oh, good, I can go home now." And we'd have a good laugh, right?
Right.
And then, what was really impressive to me, Alan, is then there are times where I would run those appointments. I did the last couple of years I spent at the company I was at for 11 years. The last 2 years I spent doing sales recruiting and sales training. And I would go to the house and people go, "Oh, you guys are the ones that say the smile thing." And I'm like, how did they remember?
That
Like,
great?
all of a sudden, yeah, I was like, "Holy shit, that did work better than I thought." Right? I thought it was just something cheesy we were saying because my boss said we were going to say it now. And really, I saw that. And then I saw some of my clients, more recently in the last few years, get 5-star reviews online based on this
Yeah,
introduction. And who couldn't use
just
more of
based on
those?
that one line. Yep.
Yeah.
I would walk into a house and first thing I try to do is to lower the sales
The
resistance, which is
guard. Yep.
built. And I would literally say, I changed it, a little bit over the years, but essentially it was, "Hey, Alan from Renewal by Anderson, just so you know, I'm not here to do a dog and pony sales show." And literally I would say dog and pony sales show and they would laugh.
Yeah.
And then I would say, "No, seriously, I'm not." And they would laugh again. And
Yeah.
just that one first 2 or 3
Line.
minutes lowered it because it wasn't what they were expecting. So,
Oh,
very cool.
absolutely. We had that the sales manager was my partner at All Weather Seal. He was so magical at this in the house. We went to a house one day and the notes on it read, "Scared, says she's gonna throw you guys out after an hour. Last company pressured her." And my partner, Leonard, he was amazing. He goes, "Watch this." We go up to the door, he knocks, and he goes, "Hey, you Sandy?" She says, "Yeah." He goes, "Hey, I'm Leonard. I'm the biggest jerk in the company, and they sent me. Don't worry, I'll only be here about 4 hours or so." And she went, he goes, "I'm just kidding. I just heard you like lots of pressure." And she starts going, "Ah," and he goes, "Look, I just need you to remember 5 words. Leonard, get the hell out. Can you remember those?" And she's like, "Sure." And he goes, "If at any point you feel uncomfortable with me being here, you just tell me, Leonard, get the hell out, and I'm gone. Fair enough?" She goes, "Okay." And we came in because, Alan, it wasn't what everybody else was saying, right? And
Exactly
she
right.
immediately pattern interruption. It worked, and we got in. And after she was telling us she had to go to a doctor's appointment, and I was new and in home sales at the time, and I'm watching the clock. I'm like, "She's about to throw us out. She's about to." And Leonard knew she was full of it, right? And he just kept
Right, yeah.
about hour and a half in. He goes, "Now, are you going to that doctor's appointment, Sandy, or were you BSing me?" She goes, "I was BSing." He goes, "I thought so." He just kept going. And I just thought, that was a great lesson for me early in the home to learn, right? And to also know on the phone when they're putting up resistance about that. I don't care how much time they want to give me because the answer is they want to give me 20 minutes in any case, but I care how much time they have if they're
Right,
not going
exactly.
anywhere, right?
Right,
And
right.
that's why the 60 to 90 thing. I mean, you get people all day long that'll agree to it on the phone. You get out there, they still don't give it to you. So that's
No,
not really accomplishing what we think it is. I'd rather find out, look, do you got anything else on the calendar we need to be respectful of? Right? You got
Right. Yeah,
Sally's
that's
ballet recital. Like,
yeah.
what do you got going on? Now, if you want to watch
Soccer
Wheel of
practice.
Fortune, yeah, if you want to watch Wheel of Fortune, that's different. That's not a real time constraint, but I'm
Right.
going to figure out what it is, right? So, yeah.
Is anybody be watching Wheel of Fortune while I'm demoing the windows?
The price is right. Yeah,
This is right with the
exactly.
TV nice and loud. So,
Oh,
hey, dwellers, quick break. Hey, did you know that the closing percentages for in-home sales has been dropping consistently over the last 10 years? It's really crazy, and there's a lot of reasons for it. But one of them is reps have so much to do in the house because there's so many different platforms that you're jumping back and forth all the time. Well, my title sponsor, Paradigm Vendo, takes care of that. In one digital platform, you can go from initial appointment right to final sale and signatures by visiting just their platform. It's amazing. You got to check them out. It's paradigmvendo.com/dwelling, PARADIGM vendo.com/dwelling, because your reps need to give the homeowners a great experience in the house, and jumping around doesn't do that. Visit paradigmvendo.com/dwelling and take care of the experience your reps are giving in the house. Well, this is great stuff. So let me transition a bit now, because now
uh-huh.
you're obviously a call center expert, but you're also a home show expert.
Hmm.
And we've actually got a question coming up in the Ask Alan segment about home
Sure.
shows, which I can't wait to get to because I want to hear your answers. But
Yeah.
talk about the importance of home shows. I hear so many different, some business owners like, oh, they're a waste of time. People are just going and window shopping. I don't want to spend my money. Some are like, it's the best, money we spend all year. So give
Hmm.
me your overall opinion of home shows for the service industry. And then what could a smaller company, what should they do? Like, should they get a big booth? Should they spend a lot of money? What would you tell me to do for as far as a home show?
Absolutely. So, all great questions. The difference between the companies that say shows and events didn't work for us and the companies that are absolutely cleaning up at shows and events, home shows and otherwise, is two very simple words. Number one, people, and number two, process. Okay.
Mm,
If I show up to the home show with a couple of sales guys that don't want to be there and a handful of brochures, I'm absolutely going to show up to the next qualified remodel or event and tell Megan how shows and events didn't work for us.
exactly.
100% will happen.
Yeah.
However, if you do what we demonstrated in business, which at my company, we did over 300 shows and events a year. So we're doing 5 to 7 a week, every single week. We
Mm,
built an army of young people. That company this year, they'll do about 39 million. They do about 400 events a year now, a lot of call center, and then they do retail. So they're inside of Walmart's, Myers, they are
mm,
inside Sam's Club, but they also develop small partnerships. So like Ace Hardware, face to face marketing is all the same. If you follow the process, whether it's canvassing, whether it's retail, whether it's events, it's the exact same script. It's just a slightly different introduction depending on where we're catching them. But the same formula holds true. So if you go to a home show, and look, if you're small, you can buy a 10 by 10 booth. You don't need a big, elaborate display. But what you do need to spend the money on is the people that you're training to do this the right way, because they have to sell the appointment in the booth
mhm,
and they have to do it. It's just as important as a sales process in terms of, we say this at this step, we say this at this step, we say this at this step. Oh, and by the way, you have a trial close here at the end, and then you extract the information. They have to follow an exact process, and they all have to do it the same every single time. That's the difference between companies that are running 200, 300, 400 leads at a show and a company that's like, oh, this show is slow, we didn't make any money. So it's the 100% difference. I say don't spend money on a bunch of dumb stuff and spend that money on people and process, which means get a company that has a proven track record of doing well at this, and figure out what they're doing and do the same thing, or hire an expert, right? Because, hiring an expert can be expensive, but what's more expensive is paying the dumb tax and buying
yeah.
all these booths, right? And paying all
And
this
not getting any
payroll
return.
and not getting a return and not having any leads at the end of a show that had 30,000 people in attendance. Like
Right.
it doesn't make sense. So, my company is small. I only had 2 sales reps at the time, but we did a home and garden show this year. And we got a 10 by 20 booth, so just slightly bigger than the smallest booth you'd get. And we wrote 81 appointments in 3 days. We ended up doing about $260,000 off of that just in fence jobs. We're still running them, actually. We got a couple home show leads on this month, even though it's been 3 months since we did it. So we're still eating off of those same leads that came in. What companies do is they focus on the shit that doesn't matter. They say,
Mm.
I've got the biggest displays. I've got the best banners. I need to do this for branding. There's a lot of things you can do for branding, and branding should absolutely be a secondary reason that you do it, but you've got to be able to bring home the bacon today. You've got to be able to put leads on for Monday when you're working a show on Saturday, and you have to have the ability to run them. And what most companies don't do is they don't go out in the aisle and engage with every single person that's walking by, and that's where they fail. They sit in the booth and they hope the customer is going to come up and say, "Hey, can I be your customer?" And look, at home shows, a few people will. And that's the danger of it is they say, "Oh, we got 3 leads and they all sold." Well, they better all sell if they came up
Yeah.
to you and said, "I wanna buy from you," right? But if you want a volume of leads, if you want that to become part of your overall marketing strategy and not just a flash in the pan in March, right? We've gotta develop a strategy, which means we can work strawberry festivals with a very similar technique, and we can work the Christmas festival. I wrote a $75,000 window and siding sale out of a bass festival once. That guy, Alan, did not get up that
Bass, like
morning.
fish bass?
Bass, yeah,
Yeah.
Mansalona Bass Festival. That guy did not get up that morning and say, "Boy, I hope I find a windows and siding company at the Bass Festival."
Yeah.
But he wrote a check for 75,000.
Yeah.
So, and so that can be done at all kinds of shows and events. I mean, we have clients that have done I have one guy, bath company in Georgia. He did one 90-minute training with us and he took off. But you know what he did? He followed our process to a T.
Yeah,
He
there you
didn't
go.
try to Frankenstein it, Alan, and say, "Well, I like this part of your process, but I like to stay. I don't want to set the appointment in the booth." Well, you're not going to have the results we promise you if you're not going to capitalize on setting appointments in the booth, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, you can get names and numbers if you want, but you're just not going to see the return. The effort's the same. So
Yes.
why not get more, right? It's 100% people in process. They have to be trained like a little army. We have home show boot camp the week before and all people working the show at my company are here. I even had 10 companies fly in. I held one here at my fence company office in
I
Grand
saw that.
Rapids. I had them come in. I said, send, 2 to 3 people from your company. We'll train them. And we had them come in and we could fit about 20 people in our conference room. I mean, it was a great training for all, and everybody went home and a couple of them really executed on it well. And a couple people said, yeah, we're going to do it part our way, part your way. And they got partial results. Like it's like
Yeah.
thing with sales process. You know that.
Exactly right. And it's such a great way to invest because
Mhm.
if they don't know what they're doing, you're just wasting your money. You're
Correct.
literally tossing your money in the air and letting the wind take it. And you made a great point because I think a lot of companies, when it comes to events, miss the boat on the non-traditional, the non-home show events, the Strawberry
Mhm.
Festival, the Bass
Mhm.
Festival, the Farmers Market.
Yeah.
You know, when I was at Renewal at Southern New England and they started this, we were like, as reps, we were like, what are they going to the fishing show for? Why are they going to
Right.
the boat show? What are they
Of course.
doing? And then all of a sudden we're just going to these boat show leads and we're like, oh wow, all these people have money because they
They can
own boats
afford
and
it.
they were at the boat show. Eh,
Secondary incomes. Yeah. They have
yeah,
expendable income. Yeah.
yeah. So it's
Exactly.
like, so I used to love these. Everyone would complain about, oh, it's another event lead. I used to love them because I knew I didn't have any competition. If they got
Yeah.
the if,
Well,
if they got the appointment at the Strawberry Festival, there was not another window company there.
that's exactly it. And that's, I actually coach, I don't do a lot of work with sales teams, but I do a little on this specific situation. They're like, well, why are we not convert? I said, because if you run leads all year that come to you that have the urgency level built for the project, so they say windows near me and they end up on your website, right? They have a certain level of urgency. Their urgency meter for the project is high. They know they need it. There's no
Right.
doubt. The Strawberry Festival people are like, yeah, I probably got old windows. I mean, I should do something, but there's no urgency. So the
Right.
salesmanship on the measure and inspection step in the home has to go up. And some just aren't equipped because it's like a vegetarian that you put on to eat meat. Like they end up in the bathroom. Like it's a bad they don't understand it's different, right? Their body doesn't respond the same.
Right.
You have that. The sales team really has to be, it's the same way when you start a canvassing program. I mean, RBA said this for years. There's a reason that they did canvassing for so many years. Closing rate on everything else goes up when we
Yeah.
run a canvassing department at our company. Why? Because once you can sell one of those, you can sell anything. But the good news is too, reps hate the shop around. You don't get that. That's the great news about the boat show lead, right? Like
Yeah.
when I've been in the house, I'm like, I'd rather the fight be at the door than when I'm asking for money. I mean, I
Right.
can get in the door.
Yeah.
Right?
Hey, sellers and dwellers. So, the next segment of Selling in the Dwelling is sponsored by our friends at Destination Motivation. What would a 33% increase in close rates and a 55% reduction in cancellation rates be worth to you? Well, check out Destination Motivation because that's exactly what they can do for you. You want to visit www.increaseoursales.com for more. Now let's get to the Ask Alan segment. The choir that you just heard sing is now going to introduce the Ask Alan segment of the podcast. For folks who have been listening, they know that if you send a question, so go to sellinginthedwelling.com, click on Ask Alan, send me a question, and if I read it, you get a free Selling in the Dwelling t-shirt.
Ah,
And this one, so I go through the questions every week to see if any line up with the guests. And
sure.
I swear, Megan, you probably know Jennifer from Pensacola because she asked a question here that's made for you.
Okay.
So this is from Jennifer in Pensacola, Florida. She
Mhm.
writes, when working a home show, I actually have two questions. So we're going to
Okay.
do two for the price of one. Her
Sure.
first question is, should you have reps themselves, sales reps themselves, work the shows at all or leave it up to the booth people? And the second question is, should you set appointments right there on the spot or just
Mhm.
get their info and set the appointments later? I know how you're going to answer that one, but go to the
Mhm.
first one. Should you have reps work the shows?
Long answer, short answer, no. And look, there's a reason for this. Let me say this, there's always an exception to every rule.
Mhm.
I have trained a couple of sales reps that have done well at shows, but it's rare. Because, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, the sales rep has so much information that they give out too much information in the booth. Okay. When the customer comes up and says, how much is an average blank? We now are asking the sales team to lie.
Mhm.
And they have to say, I don't know, or they have to say it depends, which it does depend. I mean, you know that
Yeah.
as well as I do, but the customer really presses them and they have that information. And, when the homeowner finds out they're the salesperson, they know they have that information. So
Yeah.
we end up kind of shooting ourselves in the foot because it's not that the information they have is wrong, but they also try to sell. They unfortunately don't understand the difference between selling the appointment and selling the product. And so they start trying to sell the product in the booth, meaning they're going to tell you about all our great, we have an Integra weld and it's a foam filled frame and it's a Krypton gas and 8 coats of low E. And by the way, we have a super spacer. It's not one of those metal spacers. The customer doesn't understand what any of that means if they haven't been educated. It must be demonstrated to be appreciated. And they'll come up and say, what brand do you carry? And they'll say, we carry this brand. And if the customer hasn't heard of it, they think it sucks.
Right.
And
Exactly.
and so they start going, well, I've never heard of that. And maybe I should do some more research. Do you have a brochure? And the lead is dead now. We're not
Right.
writing that lead. And
Right.
so the problem is the sales rep just has too much information. Not to mention, most of them don't want to do it. They
Yeah.
want to sit
That's the
home.
biggest thing.
I mean, that's the biggest thing. And look, why should they? To be fair, we should be keeping people in our company in their area of strength. I want to keep them busy enough with leads that they don't have time to work the damn show. They should be running leads on a Saturday, not working the home show.
Right. Right.
And so ideally that's what we would want. Now, I do have a couple of sales teams that I coach on home shows because they generate their own leads year round. They don't have an influx of leads coming in. Their sales team is the lead generation team.
Yeah. Yeah.
In
Yeah.
that case, they have taken my processes and a gutter company in the Carolinas, they've done really well with the process and at
Yeah.
the show. But it's been few and far between. Most of the time, what it is, Alan, is we have a recruiting problem. And so we throw the salespeople in there because we don't know how to recruit the right people to work the booth.
Right.
That is the wrong strategy. We need people whose whole job is to sell the appointment so that they're going after every person that has thought of doing windows in the next year and they're trying to pull them into the market sooner. So we're not just getting the yeses right now for home show, but we're getting a separate segment of the market that has a future plan of doing it as well.
Yep.
And the sales rep is not going to do that. When they say, well, we're going to wait till next year. Well, here's my card. Give me a call when you're ready. That we're going
Yeah.
to
They
lose
don't
leads.
even get the information right.
No, they'll never even get the customer's information half the time because the sales rep is going, well, if they're not doing it till next year, I don't want to. Well,
I don't want that. I
right.
don't want to waste
And
my
so,
time.
yeah, exactly. And what they don't know is we could put them on that lead and they'll sell it all day long. And we have to kind of save them from themselves. So we need, if we really want to make a big splash at the shows, we've got to hire lead generators where their whole job is to generate leads. And, we can do that. If you do a couple of shows a weekend, every single weekend, it's enough to have a part-time person and like a manager that works full-time. And then we grow it from there. But yeah, having sales reps work the show later on, usually we regret that. And we
Yeah.
say, and like I said, I've trained some, but it just doesn't have the results that training a bunch of young people who know nothing but lead generation, they're going to have a much better result because it's what they focus on 100%.
And it makes total sense. And I am totally in agreement with you. But let me play devil's advocate simply because it's been my own experience. And
Sure.
again, I'm going to be in the minority of this, but
Hmm.
when SNE used to work shows, especially the big home shows, I would
Hmm.
actually request to work them because
Hmm.
I actually knew how to, figured out on my own a good process, which I wasn't selling the window in the booth, I was selling the
Hmm.
appointment, and I was very good at it. And what SNE did was, well, you set the appointment, it's your lead. So
Sure.
I'd set myself up for the 2 weeks in a row of all these
Hmm.
home show appointments, and what I saw was the homeowner loved the fact that they knew me already coming to the
Sure.
house.
Hmm. Yeah.
But, however, I did see, yeah, Alan works the shows and he's doing great. Okay, Tony, you go work the show. And Tony's sitting there on his phone the whole time. And he's like, oh
Right.
my God, this is why do I work a home show? This is terrible. So I would
Yeah.
absolutely follow what you say, but I think there's an exception to that rep who
Sure.
understands it and gets it. Because for me, I loved home show season because I would go get
Oh yeah.
get those appointments and
Well,
I'd be set up for a month.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. My husband works the home show. He was our top sales rep, but
Yeah.
he will work the home show, but he also hears me preach this 700 hours a month, and he knows he bet, and so he loved it, right? But I'll tell you what, he struggled at first too. And what happened was him and my call center kid, Trent, were working the home show the first day, and they struggled a little bit. I taught them, we worked, drilled, and rehearsed, but neither one of them had ever worked a show. Well, my assistant Hannah, who's a call center and events trainer now, she works in my consulting practice. She goes to clients, teaches them how to do this. She walks up to the booth in her plain clothes. 2 minutes, she writes an appointment. Like just walks up to the booth on this day. Was going there looking for kitchen companies because her kitchen had flooded. And she walks up, sees Dan and Trent struggling in the booth. They watch her. She executes our process to a T. Boom, boom, boom. Writes the appointment, leaves. They go, oh, just like that. And then both of them they wrote 7 or 8 more appointments that night on a Thursday at a home show, and they
Wow.
killed it. But what I will tell you is most sales reps, unless they're the owner or they're taking serious leadership seriously, they don't wanna do it. And so but I do agree because when Dan would say, I will be the one coming out, there were certain people that did really like that, or he'd get there and they'd be
Yeah.
like, "Oh, it's you from the show." And they're like,
Yeah, exactly. Right.
yeah, and so there is some of that. Now, what we do try to do though, Alan, is actually have a pre-positioning email. And it's not quite as strong, but we can send him an email with the sales rep's picture, a little bio about him,
Yeah.
just to give that same warm, fuzzy feeling, whether he set the lead or not.
Yeah, and it's all about that. It's part of that whole buyer's journey that they're
Yes,
the customer journey that they're on. All right, so the
agree.
second half of the question, and I think you and I agree on this, and you already
Mhm.
mentioned it. Should you set the appointment right there in the booth or call them
Yes,
back later?
yeah,
I
send him
think
in the booth.
all day long, set it in the
Yeah,
booth.
it's stronger, not only because you're going to get more volume of appointments, also just because, look, once they commit, right? There's a certain amount of people that once they commit to the appointment, they're gonna go through with it no matter what. And so if we have to sort of bank on the fact that they're hopefully gonna answer our call later if we don't set the appointment in the booth
Right.
with something. And so we may never talk to those people again. This may have been our only shot. So I want to get them on the calendar with a definite set appointment. Even if it cancels, it's easier to reset
Right.
if this is the case, right? So yeah, we want to set the appointments live in the booth. Anytime I work with a company that doesn't, their goal is eventually to set leads live in the
Exactly.
booth. So might as well just, rip the band-aid off, go right for
Do
the
it.
close. Yeah. And then you could
Yeah.
send them home with some information to read over before we come out. You send them home with an appointment reminder. We've got a couple things we button up with. So but we don't want to send that home with somebody. If we send it home with somebody, if you give somebody literature, it's a goodbye. So you better be done talking to them because if you give them a brochure, they're gone and you're not getting their phone number. So
Exactly
we
right.
want to
Exactly right.
make sure we're using that in the right way.
Let me tell you a quick story about something I did when I used to before I was at SNE. I worked for Home Depot in home sales over there.
Yeah.
And we were required back then to work the stores. Like, we had to
Oh
get
yeah.
our appointments from the stores. So
Oh
we
yeah.
got, like, maybe 1 or 2 appointments from the company. The rest
Hmm.
was me walking around Home Depot aisles and asking people for appointments. So one day, it was tax season. I came up with an urgency idea. So I took one of the big 8 by 4 foam boards, the big silver foam boards that you can put on a wall, and I put it horizontally, and I drew a big calendar on it, and I put like 3 or 4 fake appointments on a day, and
Oh
then
yeah.
people would come up and I'd say, "Okay, I'm setting appointments for Windows. Here's the calendar." And they'd be like, "Oh, that Thursday's taken already? Well, let me take Friday." And I created this, I don't have a lot of space for
Yeah.
appointments,
We're booking up
urgency.
quickly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then I started tacking all these, and all of a sudden I had 30 appointments on the board and maybe like 3 or 4 open, and I'd be like, "Oh, this is the only day I got open." And it was wild because I set so many appointments because of this urgency I created by putting a calendar in front of their face.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that that's absolutely true. You know, we really fail when we lose control during scheduling, which is what usually people setting appointments don't understand is by telling the customer, "Oh, we can come out anytime. We have run appointments Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday from 10 to it's," and it's like you just told them you aren't very busy and not in
Yeah.
demand. You also gave them 17 time slots and said, "Pick one." We have a hard enough time with them picking one out of 2.
Yeah,
Let alone,
exactly.
1 out of 17. Now they're like, "Well, let me go and check my schedule. Let me talk to my wife." And you're like, "Oh, shit. That's not
Yeah.
what
I'll
I wanna
call you back tomorrow.
Correct, yep. But I like how you created the urgency with that because, it also boils down to a few of the psychological principles of influence that, Dr. Robert Cialdini talks about, which is, scarcity. People want more
Scarcity.
of that which they can have less of, right? So if they see and people also follow the herd. So social proof is
Yep.
everybody else is doing it in Home Depot. They wanna do it too. So it speaks to all those psychological cues that we know are the backbone of sales and marketing. So you just kind of executed on that in your own way and it paid off.
Yeah, it was cool. It was fun to do that. So, well, we are running out of time, Megan. This has been awesome. So tell people, I know you do consulting. So if someone listens to this podcast, wants to get in touch with you, where do they go?
Yeah, absolutely. You can email me at Megan, Megan, at TonyHoty.com, TonyHoty.com. I'm a partner in Tony Hoty Consulting. So if you want to go to our website as well, fill out a request, that'll come to me directly, and my team will be in touch with you within 24 hours to set up a call. We do free 30-minute discovery calls where we'll just sit down and talk about your needs in the call center, or special events or canvassing, whatever it might be and assess if we can help. Sometimes we can. Sometimes maybe you're coming to us a little early and we tell you, hey, get a couple things in order, and then we'd be
Mhm.
happy to help. But either way, we're going to point you in the right direction of where to go.
And I got to tell you, folks, I mean, I've been following Megan for years now, and she knows her stuff, as you heard on this podcast, and she's really well respected in the industry. So if you need help with getting leads, she's your first phone call. So, Megan, I want to thank you for being here. This has been awesome. And I want to thank everyone out there in the selling and the dwelling world for joining me on this great episode we just had with Megan Beattie. Remember, our title sponsor is Paradigm Vendo. Check them out at the link in the show notes, but they are also at paradigmvendo.com/dwelling, the best software you're going to find in the in-home service industry. And also Destination Motivation is also the sponsor for the Ask Alan segment. That's it for now. Megan, thank you very much for joining me, and we'll talk soon. And thank you, everyone out there. We'll see you next time on Selling in the Dwelling. Take care.